Firstly, welcome to the first of our indoor hockey webinars. Let me just start by sharing our screen here. The first thing is welcome to the first in the series of the indoor hockey webinars. We're going to sort of focus on specific areas of the game. So the first thing is it's great to see so many keen interested people that wanted to join from all over parts of the world, which is great. Often presentations, especially these webinars, are very general and they try to cover too many different areas in a short period of time. What I want to do is try and do something different. And I want to focus on particular areas of the indoor hockey game and also cater for some higher performance perspective as well. So for example, this webinar will look at running for about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how we go and questions and things like that. And we're going to focus for this one on the area of key skills for high performance for individuals. So in future webinars, what I'll be looking at is trying to have, say, a webinar on just defensive structures and a webinar on just tactics and a webinar just on training drills and games, a webinar on effective goal scoring, for example. So each one will have a particular focus rather than just being trying to put everything into one and not really exploring the ideas as much as we could. So in terms of before we start, just make sure you've got your audio muted. So that means it should be like a little red microphone with a line through it. But if you have any questions, if you do have any questions, just turn your microphone on and just ask them, or you can use the chat function as well, and we'll sort of keep up to date with what's being typed in there as well. And obviously at the end we'll also have opportunity to ask any questions as well. So just quickly myself, my name's Steve Willer and I'm the current Australian men's indoor hockey head coach, and I've been in this role since early 2016. And I've been involved in coaching indoor hockey for over 20 years. So a lot of the stuff that we're looking at here has just come from my experience with indoor hockey and my experience traveling throughout Australia and over Europe and looking at various teams and various styles of play. Our webinar today, like we said, we're going to look at some key skills for high performance and in particular in relation to individuals. So it's going to focus on a number of skills that I believe, from my experience, have the ability to impact on a higher level indoor hockey match. And undoubtedly, there'll be people who look at some of the skills I've included and they'll be wondering why they're there. And there'll be other people that will look at some of the skills and go, well, why isn't this one included? So it's not meant to be a definitive list. And I've sort of prioritized what I feel are some of the important skills if a player wants to be able to compete at an elite level and wants their team to be successful. So we're not going to be looking at, for example, some basic core skills that players need to perform consistently at a high level. So for example, we expect players to be able to push past the ball and basics receiving. So we're not going to include those ones here or look at those ones. We're going to look at the skills which players need to basically perform at the higher level. So I've broken the key skills into a few different areas. So the elimination area, the passing and goal scoring area, some skills that a defender might find useful, a couple of skills the goalkeeper might find useful, some defensive skills, and then some questions at the end. So the very first skill I want to talk about is the spin. As we're aware with space in indoor, it's very limited on the court, and a player's ability to move and eliminate and use tight spaces is critical. If they can move through tight spaces quickly and they can change direction quickly, it's a huge asset for any player on the court. The spin's used to eliminate an opponent who's directly in the path of the ball carrier. So, for example, you know, we can't go any more forwards because the player's there, or we've got our back to the opponent and we've received and we need to turn around to be able to beat them. So the spin is especially useful in a man-on-man marking situation and when receiving with your back to the opponent. Forwards and mid-court players often find they receive the ball with their back to their opponent, and the spin becomes an important skill for them especially. The spin utilizes the hook of the stick, and it moves the ball in a circular motion. So we're not using the face of the stick, the ball's going in the hook, and it moves in a circular path. It's usually performed from a stationary position, but it can be performed on the move, but much more difficult trying to do it on the move. The most common direction players spin is to their left. So we can spin both ways, but the most common you'll find is towards a player's left. So what we're going to do through this presentation is we're going to use a lot of video examples from elite level just to show these skills in practice and how effective they can be. So here's the first clip where we're talking about the spin. So you can see the player from Netherlands here basically does a spin to eliminate that player and is able to quickly keep moving with the ball. So the spins allowed him to eliminate that player and continue to stay involved. Here's another great example of using a spin and essentially to eliminate a close defender and move through a tight space. So there's not a lot of room, and a spin allows us to change direction but utilize very small spaces. So the Czech player in the red has got his back facing towards the direction he wants to go. The Australian player in the green is putting him under a bit of pressure, and then he spins on the inside around him quite quickly, putting himself in a really good position to then attack. Here's another great example of a spin to use to eliminate an opponent when receiving it back to the opposition, and then allowing that to create a great pass and a goal. So in the red, we have Austria. Ball comes through the middle, there's our spin, opens up the space and is able to give a nice pass then to create that scoring opportunity. But receiving again with his back to the actual direction he wanted to go, receiving with his back towards the player, and then able to quickly turn on the inside and keep moving forwards to make this attacking opportunity. So I hope that shows you some examples of the spin and how effective it is. So it's one of those skills we want to try to encourage to be done correctly, because it just adds so much value to our players' game. The second one we're going to talk about in terms of the skills is a turn. Now, a turn is very similar to a spin, but it isn't an actual spin. So the turn is used to eliminate an opponent in more situations where the opponent is beside us or on the side of the ball carrier. So whereas the spin was more when a player was directly in line with us, so we either had our back to them or they were directly in front of us, the turn is when we have that opponent that gets up beside us, and it's an ability to change direction and eliminate our opponent, and a turn is tend to be doing on the move. So whereas the spin was more stationary at times, the turn is ultimately more effective when it's done on the move. The spin, as we said before, utilizes the hook of the stick and moving the ball in a circular path. Now you'll notice with these examples of the turn actually uses the face of the stick to move the ball, and the ball moves in a straight dragging path. So it's more like a drag where the ball's moved and the body spins around, rather than us putting the ball on the hook of the stick and spinning the ball around us. So a turn's usually performed on the move at speed with little change in the player's speed, so they don't tend to stop. So here we have an example with the white team, which is Russia with the ball. So you see the difference there with the turn compared to the spin. It stays in the face, it's a drag, and then that quick change of direction. Another example here of the turn with the red team, which is Belgium. So you'll see it's a dragging motion and the body spins, but not the ball. So it's very straight and it uses the face of the stick rather than the hook. And if we go back to the Russian example, you can see the player coming in on the side to put pressure on, and then that's the dragging movements and the quick change of direction. So that's a turn compared to a spin. So hopefully everyone can see the difference between the two. They've both got their place, and they're both very important elimination skills, especially when being put under pressure. The next skill we're going to look at is, again, an elimination skill, and it's what I call the back drag. Some other people might refer to it as a V drag. I tend to just call it the back drag. So it involves the movement of the ball on a backwards angle when dragging, and it's ideally done with the ball moving backwards, not the player. So we're not after a movement where the player drags the ball backward and steps backward themselves. We're after the movement where the ball simply moves backwards and the player can continue moving forwards. Too often players move the ball square or slightly forward when they drag, and they get dispossessed. And this is due to indoor, where players can defend with a flat stick tackle, so they've got a lot more reach and a lot more stretch. And the speed the ball carrier is moving in indoor, that when we do that drag, which is squarish or slightly forward, we tend to have the ball get too close to the opponent's stick, and we tend to find it difficult to eliminate them. With this backward dragging movement, we tend to find that it's easier to eliminate that defender, especially with a long stick, but also the back drag later on will allow us to move into different moves. For example, we can do a back drag, which then turns into an arc. We can do a back drag, which turns into a turn. We can do a back drag, which turns into a spin. But it's much harder to do a spin or a turn when we're doing more of a squarish drag. So here's an example of the back drag in a game. So you can see that movement of the ball coming backwards. So therefore the player is essentially eliminated, and then we open up an opportunity for time and vision. Here is another one. We can see that movement backwards again of the ball. Here's another one, little drag backwards. So when the player reaches in for the tackle, that it's much harder for them to get that ball because the backwards movement doesn't allow it to get into the path of the ball. Another one here, we can see the little back drag, and this one's good because you can see the movement continually going forwards, and then that little back drag with a quick pass. Another little back drag. Okay, so hopefully you can see the advantage of that back drag. And again, like I mentioned at the start, some people will call it a V drag. I have a tendency of calling it a back drag, only for the fact that often with a V drag, it's a backwards and a forwards movement. And with some of the movements, I like to see the back drag purely dragged backwards and left in that position for the next move. But as we know, everything has different names, as long as everyone's on the same page of what that name represents. The next skill is it's a very basic skill, but it's a extremely beneficial skill, and a skill that creates so much opportunity in the game of indoor. So it's basically a skill called arcing, and arcing involves moving at speed with the ball and in an anti-clockwise circular path. So it's like running to the right in a bit of a circle, and we're trying to get around that opponent's backstick. It allows the ball carrier to protect the ball. It allows us to force the opponent to their reverse stick, exposing their feet and gaps. It's very difficult for an opponent to use their reverse stick to cover their feet and cover their gaps. And it opens up space behind the opponent for passes or shots or cutting in. When arcing, it's important that I believe that a player can carry the stick in one hand at times. So we sort of spoke a little bit about this back drag leading into things. So you could do a back drag, and then as you're coming around the player, you could extend your right hand and have the stick in one hand in your right hand and use it for extra reach as you arc. And it creates further distance then between your opponent and the ball. The arc can often start with the back drag, like I said, but it can also simply be just started from the initial trap. Arcing is also very simple, but high impact. It can create some really great attacking passages of play and goals, and I hope some of these clips will show that to you. It's a very simple thing, but again, if it's done correctly, it has a huge impact. Now, one of the key things that you have to remember when doing the arc is that you actually need to have enough space to your right to run into or run through. So without running into the boards or a second opponent. So often a mistake some people will make is they try to arc, but they don't actually provide themselves with enough space. So then what happens is they end up running into the boards or running into a defender. So it's really important to make sure you've got the space to do it and create that space for yourself to be able to run the arc. Another key to the actual arc effective is to carry the ball in line with the right foot or slightly to the right. So we're not wanting to carry it in the center of our body or to the left. As we're running around the opponent and we're putting the opponent on our left, we want to put the ball towards our right foot where it's a bit further away from the defender. They have to reach further. But it also then allows the important skill of being able to drag the ball from our right foot even further to the right, which makes it even more difficult for the opponent to reach. So having it out to that right foot, we can also put it slightly to the side, meaning we can run faster without worrying about treading on the ball or getting in our way. We can extend our stick, like we said earlier, to one hand, and we can run with it even further. We can back drag, all these sort of things. So here's a couple of examples of that arcing, and you should see what we're talking about with that ability to really create space when it's done well. So here we see a big arc from the orange player, which is Holland, brings the defenders onto the back stick. Didn't score, but really created a good opportunity there. Here's another example. So Holland in the orange, Germany in the white, runs around. He carries the stick in his left hand, which really doesn't change the position of the ball away from the defender. Oh, sorry, it's Austria, I mean, not Germany. Creates the distance. Here we have Poland running out of the corner with an arc onto the back stick. We have Poland again running out of the corner. And you can just see how it makes it so difficult for a defender to defend any of these because of the fact that they're put in a position where they're having to maintain a high pace to stay with the attacker, but it's also putting them in a point of weakness on that reverse side, but allowing the attacker to stay on their forestick. So I'll just watch them again because I think they're very, very useful just to be able to do them well. And you'll notice with all of those that they required space to do because the elimination is through the running, the movement of speed and running. So they actually require the space to be able to effectively do them. All right, the next area we're going to touch on. So the last couple were all about elimination. The next ones we're going to talk about are falling into the area of one-touch passing and one-touch goal shots. As we're all aware, indoor hockey is a very fast game, and the amount of space and time that you have is very minimal. And spaces and opportunities, they're there, but they close quickly. The higher the level of the game, the faster it becomes, the less time players have to execute decisions, and the gaps disappear quicker. The more time a player has the ball in their stick, the more time the opposition's going to have to move, to cover gaps, to structure their defense, to apply pressure on the ball carrier. So we're looking at minimizing the time that we need to execute something. It's important that we can utilize the opportunities when they arise. And like I said, that means minimizing the time required to pass the ball or take a shot. And the use of one-touch passing and one-touch goal shooting has the ability to create significant goal shooting opportunities because we can take advantage of those gaps or those spaces quickly. Now, the one-touch shot or pass, it's not a deflection. So it's a distinct type of pass or shot. And generally there is a movement towards the ball and it's that one-touch movement. So it's not simply just placing the stick in line with the ball and changing the direction of the ball. So it's not a deflection. It's actually a one-touch pass where we're physically moving the ball with that push or that flick, but moving the stick towards the ball a very small distance. So one of the keys is teaching young players, firstly, is how to do a one-touch pass properly without doing it as a hit. So without any backswing and starting with the ball very close to the ball. Sorry, with the stick very close to the ball. Now, here's a mixture of examples of one-touch passing and one-touch goal shooting. And I'm hoping that you'll look at them and you'll just see how effective a skill it is to be incorporating. So this was an arc we saw, but there's that one touch. So the ball moves in quickly, defense doesn't have a chance to move. Quick little one touch and a quick one touch shot takes advantage of the goalkeeper out of position and defenders don't have a chance to move. Another quick one touch goal shot, no one has a chance to move. Again, the one touch shot, very difficult to work out when the shot's happening, where it's going. Now in that one, if you trapped the ball, you could imagine the goalkeeper would have been back there. And similar sort of thing, the one touch in those last two, they probably wouldn't have scored if they'd trapped the ball because the goalkeeper would have had time to have moved into that position. So as the ball comes to here, we can notice that the goalkeeper's almost there and we notice how close the goalkeeper comes. So if he had trapped the ball, we probably wouldn't have been able to utilize that space to eliminate the goalkeeper. And this next one, like we said, a similar sort of situation. Korper from Austria here fades out a little bit into nice space. And then he gets the ball here with that big open gap to the right-hand side of the keeper or the left-hand side as Korper looks at it. And then as he puts it in, you'll notice that it doesn't require much space to beat him, but if he was to trap it, the goalkeeper's chances of saving that have significantly improved. So the one-touch shot and goal shooting really allows us to take some opportunities. Here's another one. Now, I like this one. This is a mixture. This is more than one touch. So there's 1, 2, and then you've got that one-touch goal shot. So those quick one-touch passes really catch the opposition out and don't allow them to get back in position, and it catches the goalkeeper out. We'll watch it one more time. So you can just see and imagine if they were trapping, it would just be so much harder to try to turn that into a goal. Now, this one, in this situation, I want you to look at this clip and I want you to ask yourself when you look at it, whether you think these spaces and the shot would be there if one-touch passes weren't used. Would they have been able to have the same result if either the pass or the shot had been trapped by either of these players first? So that quick one-touch pass from the defender in through the gap into the circle and the really quick one-touch shot from our player in the circle has really made this look like a spectacular goal, but it's that basic one-touch pass and basic one-touch shot, catching everyone off guard. Okay, now earlier we spoke about the spin and we spoke about it as an effective way for eliminating. So it's an elimination skill. However, one of the things about the spin is it can be utilized in different ways. So it can be utilized as a pass, for example, but it can be used as an actual goal shot. So the spin can be used as an effective goal scoring technique where the player spins and they release the ball rather than spinning and then running with the ball. So incorporating the spin into a shot can create so many goal scoring opportunities, especially when if you didn't do a spin shot, you would basically not get a goal shot. And the spin shot is very difficult for a goalkeeper to save because it's hard for the goalkeeper to read, one, when is the ball being released, and then two, the exact path the ball is going, which then makes it even harder for the goalkeeper. So we'll go through a couple of videos here so you can have a look and see it in action. Right, I just want to go back to one of these quickly. So we're just going to go back to the one here where the orange player, so the player from Holland, does this spin here, and we've got this German player very close, and it comes very close to what we call drilling that player. One of the important things with the spin and the spin shot and the spin pass is teaching players when to do it and how to do it safely. So we don't want players just going out there and willy-nilly spinning and spinning into people, but it's important to teach them about having the space there, how to spin to protect the actual ball and not be spinning into a player. And one of the things I find is if a player's got the ball and they've got their back to a defender, if they can see the body of the player down their right-hand side, then that often means the defender is to their right and that they can spin to the left because there's no one there. If they've got a defender behind them, but they can't see any of their body to their right, so they might just see a stick or they might see nothing, that should be telling them that the defender is on their left. So if they spin, they're going to be spinning directly into that defender. So it's really important that they have mechanisms and ways of working out where that defender is and making sure that they're not going to spin directly into them. So this one came very close to being a drill, and we can see that the German player wasn't very happy, but it was allowed to play. But with all the other examples here, you can notice that they've been able to do a good quality spin without it being dangerous to anyone. So this one is another spin goal, but I wanted to show this one because it's really a classic example of what an effective spin shot is. And it's especially useful in the situation when a player receives the ball and they have their back to goals, but the goalkeeper has also come out at them and the goalkeeper's trying to hold them up or prevent them from shooting. So it's very effective in these situations when that goalkeepers are trying to apply that pressure and the player with the ball has received it with their back to goals. And we want to do something quickly because if we take too long, the defenders are going to come back and we're going to lose the opportunity. So this is a club game from Germany, this clip. So you can see the ability there to just be able to receive with his back to the goalkeeper and then be able to spin and release the ball quickly without the opposition defenders being able to get back and put him under pressure. And the goalkeeper sort of just gets left stranded there. It's just very difficult for them to save. So again, this is why the spin and this spin shot is a very, very critical skill because these open up so many goals that just would not happen if we were unable to do these sort of things. The next area is, again, it's a goal shot, but it's the reverse shot. And one of the key things is we need to try not to limit ourselves to just shooting on one side of our body. So yes, it's stronger to shoot on our forestick. Yes, we can often get more power on our forestick, but we can't make our life of our opponents easy by them knowing that if we're running on our backstick, we're never going to shoot. We need to force the defender into a position where they're not sure. Are we going to shoot? Are we not when we're on the backstick? So we need to keep that opponent honest. And if an opportunity presents itself and we're on the reverse stick, we need to make that count. So it might be that we're on our reverse stick and for some reason the goal is opened up because someone's out of position. Or we've been playing a very tight game, we're being marked very tightly, and we're not getting many shots, but suddenly we've found a little bit of space on our reverse stick to shoot, and we have the ability to shoot. Now, if we shoot, we've always got a chance of scoring. Now, even if we don't score, then maybe what might happen is if we've put the ball in an effective position, maybe the goalkeeper does a poor rebound and the ball comes back into play and maybe we earn a penalty corner. Maybe the goalkeeper puts it out and we get a long corner. But we provide ourselves with opportunities if we create more opportunities for us. And the ability to shoot from both sides of the body will open up twice the number of goal shooting opportunities. So we can see a reverse stick shot there. There really wasn't space to have the shot on the forestick, but the ability to take that quick shot on the reverse stick and use the space has resulted then in a nice goal here. So we'll look at a couple more examples. Now, this one shows a variety of reverse stick examples. So it shows different situations, maybe running with the ball, maybe standing still, high shots, low shots. It shows the variety of the reverse stick shot. So it doesn't need to be like the last one where it's a trap at the top and then a really quick high shot. It can be used in a variety of situations to create that extra opportunity. So we're going to have a look at those one more time, but each time I want you to look at each one and say to yourself, if they were unable to take the shot on their backstick, so I don't mean they were unable because the game wouldn't allow it, but if they didn't possess that skill or that confidence to actually physically use their reverse stick to take a shot at goal, would there really have been an opportunity for them to have scored a goal or created a similar goal scoring opportunity? So have a little bit of a look again at each one and see if you can see whether, was there an alternative? And if they didn't have the ability to shoot on their backstick, the opportunities that may have been missed. Okay, so again, we need to try to practice and encourage the ability for players to shoot both sides. Now, this next one is something a little bit different. So we're going to talk about a reverse spin pass. We talked about the ability to use spinning to eliminate a player early on, and we talked about being able to use the spin to have a goal shot. Now we're going to show you one example of being able to use a spin to make a pass, but whereas all the other spins we've showed have been the spin to the left, the spin onto the forestick, we're actually going to show you a spin to the right or a spin onto the reverse stick. Now, sometimes, again, we can become a bit predictable with the ball, and defenders can overcompensate, and they can start to defend and be a lot more to one side, a lot more particularly towards our forestick, which then means they open up more of a gap and more of an opportunity to go down their forestick, especially in situations where it's very static and we're standing still, because the defender doesn't sort of sit there and go, oh, they've got the ability to make a pass down their backstick or ability to turn that way. So being able to have the ability to spin both ways, to eliminate, to pass, or to shoot, is really beneficial. And the great thing is, if you can spin to eliminate a person, you can spin to pass, or you can spin to shoot, because essentially they're all the same thing. It's just with the spinning to eliminate, you keep the ball on your stick after you've spun. Spinning to pass or spinning to shoot, you essentially leave the ball off your stick once you've turned. So this one's an example of being used that reverse spin, because the pass space is opened up to the player's right, and they're able to then put a beautiful pass across the face of the goal and then create a great goal scoring opportunity. So again, you'll notice with this one that once the defender comes over to the player with the ball, it feels like he's got him under pressure, and he's overcompensated and he's left him a big space on that back line. Now, if our attacker with the ball decides to spin into that space and run the ball, it's a very small space, and the defender's very likely to put his stick down, and we're probably not going to be able to eliminate him in that position. So being able to spin and release through that space, the ball will be able to make it through there. The other good thing about this here is the defender who's got his stick down and leaving that space, and even the defender further back in the circle, none of them are really expecting the player to be able to pass on his back stick this way. So they're all like, yep, no, we've got him covered. He's going to have to run out, or he's going to have to run backwards. And he's able to utilize that space between the goalkeeper and the defender, or that nice line along the back line, to find his teammate sitting just behind the keeper and out of view, to tap in a really easy goal. So we'll watch it one more time. And there we go. Little ball down that back line, but using the space the player's created by using that reverse spin as a pass. All right. We mentioned earlier about a one-touch shot not being a deflection shot. And another critical skill for players is being able to take deflection shots. Now, the main difference here is the deflection shot really involves just using the stick to change the direction of the ball. I like the players to predominantly use the head of the stick to deflect the ball, only because by using the head of the stick, it can be treated more simply as a deliberate mistrap. So the ball can be coming towards my stick, and I've decided, rather than trapping it, I'm just going to angle the head of my stick, and the ball will hit the stick and then move off on a different direction. So therefore, if the ball gets passed to me and I find the pass isn't fast enough, I can trap the pass. If the pass comes at me and I go, wow, this is a great pass, this has got lots of power on it, I can simply, rather than trapping it, just change the angle of the head of my stick, whether that be angling out away from my body, so I can deflect the ball away from my body, or I could even turn the stick slightly in towards my body and I can deflect the ball inside. So it allows that ability to easily meet and connect with the ball, because I always trap with the head of my stick. So if I'm going to deflect, I should never miss a deflection, because it's essentially a deliberate mistrap. So this is Belgium here in the white. And there'll be a couple of different angles of this one to help show the deflection. Now here's another deflection. So one of the great things about a deflection is it just can change the direction of the ball so quickly that no one can react to it. And it relies, though, on the person who's passing the ball to really have some power in their pass. If the pass isn't strong enough or powerful enough, then the ball's going to hit the stick and we're not going to have the speed generated coming off the stick. And therefore, we're not going to get that nice quick change of direction so that the ball can go into the goals. Now, one of the tips I try to give my players is when we deflect, in essence, so when the ball's being passed into the circle and essentially we want to deflect the ball to try and score, we remember that the deflection is a change in direction of the ball. So what that means is if I stand in line with the goalkeeper or I pass the ball directly at the goalkeeper and then my player deflects it, the ball's gone from traveling directly at the goalkeeper to now being deflected so it's moving away from the goalkeeper. Whereas if I pass the ball more to the side of the goalkeeper and my players to the side of the goalkeeper, then what that means is once I deflect it, I might actually deflect it into the goalkeeper. So one of the things I try to encourage my players is the concept of we want to change the direction of the ball with a deflection. So let's put the ball firstly at the target that we don't want to hit. So let's put it at the goalkeeper. And then when we deflect it, we're going to deflect it so it moves away from the goalkeeper. And that's just one of the little things I try to get my players to think about rather than just having the ball move away from the keeper and then you end up deflecting it at the keeper. All right. Another critical skill, I believe, with shooting is what I call the wrist shot. So sometimes and in the past, a lot of players have done very big drags. They're obsessed with power. But what happens is it takes a long time to generate this power, a big drag. Players get back and defend, goalkeepers have time to get in position. And we're really relying on the physical power to eliminate the goalkeeper rather than the accuracy or the timing or using the space. A wrist shot involves using our wrists for a very quick shot at goal with the use of a very small dragging movement or almost no dragging movement. The great thing with the wrist shot, it can be done on the move. It can be very deceptive. It can be put high, low, on the ground. It can be done with power, or it can be done like a bit of a loop over or a bit of a lollipop over. So it has a lot of variety and ability, and the player can do it with vision because generally when they're doing a wrist shot, generally the ball is being carried in front of them and in a good position with vision. So you just see a little flick of the wrist, top left corner there, didn't require a big dragging movement, and it allowed him to easily put it in the position and get the height he wanted as he was still running. So rather than a pause and a big drag, we had the nice wrist movement. Here's some more examples. So again, he's able to run forwards with the ball. He's able to use his vision and he's able to see where he wants to place it. And then a quick little flick of the wrist, he's able then to put that ball exactly where he wants it without having to take a drag, without having to move sideways, without having a player having the time to come and put him under pressure. So just that little wrist movement, and he can sort of place the ball. And the great thing about the wrist shot too is you can be extremely accurate with it, even when moving at pace. So it allows that really good placement. It particularly allows you to put the ball nice and high in those corners or over a goalie's shoulder. If you're playing goalkeepers that tend to keep their gloves pretty low, or they have their gloves down around their waist, it allows that nice little flicking movement over the top of the shoulder. And basically, it then allows, when a goalkeeper goes down as well, for you to flick it over them too. Or if a goalkeeper suddenly stands up, to use your wrist just to place the ball low. I noticed there's a quick little question there about when you teach younger players the wrist shot, what's the best advice for ball placement? Note that they are not strong and use the drag. One of the things I find with the wrist pass is for them not to be sprinting in as quick as they can to start with, but move in a little bit slower, so a little bit of a jog. Get used for them to be having the ball in line with their right foot, or just inside their right foot, or just outside their right foot, but not very far from that right foot. We don't want it all the way to the side, and we don't want it behind them. But by having it in front of that right foot, what they can do is, I call it a little disconnection. So what it means is, as they're running with the ball, the head of the stick is on the ball, the face of the stick. And just before they're going to do the wrist shot, they sort of let their stick and the ball disconnect. So they create about a ball's distance between the ball and the face of the stick. And then what they do is they move their stick towards the ball, and they use their wrists. Now, one of the ways I get especially younger players to practice it is, I always get them to practice this where I ask them to try to do it where the ball is placed over the goalkeeper's shoulder. So I give them a target where they're looking at trying to get it over the goalkeeper's shoulder, so they're getting that real wrist action. And we don't talk about power with them, but we're more interested in getting it over the goalie's shoulder. If they're struggling with doing it on the move, we generally will get them to start with the ball standing still, and then walking pace, and then doing it faster. But with that disconnection between the ball and the stick, they often find it a little bit easier, rather than just keeping the stick on the ball, because sometimes the ball will get too far in front and they can't reach the ball. All right. The next one, it's very similar to a wrist shot, but it's what I term a quick shot. So it means it's not necessarily using the wrists, it might be using the arms, but it's just the ability to shoot quickly again, without that ability to waste time with a big drag. So we want players with the ability to minimize their execution time, rather than trying to go for these big drags and power. And having the ability to take an extremely quick shot, whether that be through a spin, whether that be through a wrist, whether that be through a one touch, is going to be what can expose goalkeepers and spaces. So here's a really good example, I think, of a player receiving and then having a quick shot. So they haven't had a one-touch shot here. They've had a trap, and then they've had the real quick shot. But you'll notice that the time between the trap and the shot really creates this goal scoring opportunity. And you'll notice with this one in particular here too, that the player has been able to receive and then take this shot even as they're moving backwards. So they haven't had to receive the ball, then drag the ball forwards, and then step forwards towards the net and take this shot. So the idea of the quick shot is the ability to disconnect between the lower body, as in the legs, and the upper body, and be able to move one direction with your feet, but still be able to have that strong core, and be able to effectively use our arms and our shoulders and our wrists to still be shooting, even though our feet aren't involved in the actual motion of the shot. So one of the great things, like I've said, is this movement. You can see his feet still moving backwards as he's actually taking the shot, but he's been able to control his upper body differently than his lower body. And if we'd had even half a second longer, this player in the maroon, which is Queensland in Australia, would have probably stopped that shot. And the goalkeeper we mentioned earlier about these high shots, if goalkeepers have their gloves down low, it makes it difficult then to save these. So particularly these over-the-shoulder quick high shots are great against keepers when they have their hands low or really tight defending. All right, so we're going to move on to the next area. So we talked about we're going to have some skills which were defender focused, as in the position of a defender. Now, I call this crabbing because it's a movement which is like a side step, a shuffling of the feet. They don't really cross over, but it's a movement of the body where there's these little sideward steps, these little backward steps, shuffling or crabbing, as I call it, around the ball. And this is a very useful skill for defenders when they're in possession of the ball. So it's their ability to be able to hold onto the ball, but be able to keep space between them and an opponent and keep their vision of passing options, creating time for themselves. So what they're trying to do is, especially when being pressed, keep that space and that time, keep their vision, and be able to pass without turning over in those critical positions. So you can see here that the defender, as a player in the red, started to move towards them. So the player with the ball, the right defender, as the player in the red starts to move towards them, they do this, what I call crabbing again, or this movement backwards, but they're still looking forwards. They've still got possession of the ball. They've still got their vision, but they're creating and keeping their space and their time so that the opponent isn't putting them under so much pressure they lose their vision. And then they're able to identify a pass because they've still got all this time and be able to easily give it. So this is that crabbing, and in particular this backwards movement to then create. A lot of defenders, unfortunately, especially young ones, when they say receive this ball here, they'll see the opponent running at them, they'll feel the pressure, they'll stand still, and they'll put their head down, and they basically don't create any space or vision for themselves, but they close themselves off and they end up losing possession. So we're after this nice little movement where they can create space for themselves, even while moving backwards, still have the vision and the control to then make that pass. Here's another example of it, same game. So we can see a little one there, but we can see this is a slight variation from the player at the back where he moves sideways rather than backwards. So it can be used not only to just move backwards, but it can also be used in the situation where we may not be wanting to run into our circle or into the goalkeeper, but the moment we receive the ball and we can see that player about to move into us, or we can see more of a better passing line or opportunity to the side, again, we're facing forwards, we're keeping possession of the ball in front, we're keeping our vision, but we're shuffling or moving or crabbing towards the sides so that we're then able to maintain the possession without any real pressure. So you can see the person in the red isn't really able to put this defender under pressure because the defender's kept the space and created it for himself. So it's one of the important skills we need to make sure, especially the younger defenders, really learn, because as the higher they go up, the more they're going to be put under pressure. Now, Again, we're going to look at another skill for the defender. Now, we're going to particularly look at a skill for a right defender, so a defender on the right-hand side of the boards. And this skill with the ball is really important. It's the ability for the defender on the right-hand side to be able to eliminate the front line of the opposition's defense with a run rather than a pass. So by beating it with a run, they're being able to create that extra attacker. They're able to force the opposition to deal with a breakaway situation and create a situation where the attackers outnumber the opposition. We tend to do this on the right side with the right defender because we're going down the opposition's reverse stick, and it then is similar to being able to use an arc or a back drag as well. And it really has the opportunity of creating that extra man when our defender on the right side wants to make that little run, and it's going to keep the opposition honest again because they can't just sit there, put pressure on the defender when he gets the ball and think, oh, well, he's just going to pass it. He's got to be really conscious then of defending and stopping that defender running past him. So as a right defender, we want to teach our players to be able to try to manipulate the forward on that side of the court, see if they can create the space. So one of the things I will tell my right defender is if we want to eliminate that front line and we want to eliminate them with a run, then we can't be standing right on the boards because we've got no room to run. And when we receive, we're going to have the defender from the opposition come right across to the boards and we've got no real room. So as a right defender, if we want to be doing this, we often want to try to sit ourselves further in court. So we then have the room to use to then eliminate that frontline defense. It's often best used when the opposition gets a bit aggressive, when they want to push up or put you under pressure, when they start a bit close. It's not really effective when the defender's receiving the ball and the opposition's 10 meters away, because it's really a quick elimination of that front line rather than running 20 meters to eliminate them. So I've got 4 or 5 good examples I feel here, which will give you how effective it is and also how many different teams and different right defenders do this at an elite level. So here he's forced the player to reach out on that reverse stick. And one of the beauties about indoor hockey is you can just create attacking penalty corner opportunities just through putting the defense in a situation where they might lose a little bit of control and reach in when they shouldn't. So by the German right defender here making this little run, he's been a little bit close to the boards and hasn't had much room, but the player from Switzerland has decided to reach in, and then that's caused the ability to get this attacking corner. Here's another example. So this is Iran versus Austria. So Iran's in the white. So again, look at the right defender. He's very close to the board, so he's going to have to use some real pace, and he's going to have to make sure he's fairly close to the Austrian defender in that front line so he can get past him. But let's look at how he makes the small amount of space count the most for himself. So he receives, he steps in a bit, fakes it, and then goes. So he's put the Austrian player on the wrong foot and off balance and then cut back in. And again, if we look at this, I'll pause the clip here, but have a look at how now the Iranian player has now created this extra player in attack. He's got the numbers advantage here. He's put the Austrian player on the reverse stick to defend. So he's opening up a lot of opportunities here. Here's another one. So we're going to be running towards the right-hand side of the screen down the bottom. He's our right defender. And it's actually Poland here, right defender, going to go for a bit of an elimination on the front line here. So again, that little sort of movement to look like he's going inside, that drag movement out, and that quick little run. And it then creates this whole disorganization and breakaway situation. Another example, so we've got the right defender up on the top of the screen for Germany against Austria. And again, we create this nice breakaway situation through the right defender. So we need the right defender to be having the ability to wanting to be an attacking player and eliminate that front line through a run when they can. So if they only pass, we really miss big opportunities here. So we want to teach right defenders to be able to eliminate through the run. And another one. So again, we've got Germany in the white here. Different player though for Germany from the last time. Bit closer again to the boards, but notice that what he's then done is to compensate for being closer to the boards here, how he's then used the boards as a mini sort of pass, a mini drag extender to get through that space and then run straight onto it. So again, if we look at this situation, we've now got two Austrian players behind us chasing. We've got a third Austrian player in his defensive half now having to move over and worry about the situation. So we've created this great breakaway and chaotic defensive position that our German team can take advantage of. So it's really effective if we can get our defenders, like I've said a few times, into that. All right. Now, we're going to talk about two of the goalkeeping skills that I think are important, especially in today's hockey. So in today's hockey, the first one is the right glove save. So the design of the right-hand glove, which holds the stick now for goalkeepers, it's more conducive to saving the ball. It's flatter. It's a bit more like a glove that we can use to actually save, like our left glove. So we want to promote our goalkeepers using their right glove as a first option rather than the stick. We're going to have more coordination with our right glove. So we're going to have more coordination with our right glove and a bigger option than we are with reaching with our stick. So we want that right glove to be then used rather than stick. Now, the right glove is going to not only be bigger than the stick, but it's also going to provide a better rebound opportunity and the ability to clear the ball better. One of the things I always say to my goalkeepers is, yep, it's great for you to save a shot, but there's no point saving a shot if you're going to give the opposition a second shot. So you actually want to make sure that when you save the ball, that you're not giving the opposition the opportunity for a second shot. So therefore, we want to make sure that clearance or that rebound goes out or goes away from our opponents and they don't get a second chance. And the right glove is perfect for that sort of situation. So here's two examples of using the right glove rather than the stick to make saves. So there's the right glove, and you can just see the rebound difference there. So if we imagine that exact same situation, but, whoops, let me go back, sorry. So if we imagine when this ball was to be saved, if the goalkeeper saved that and it hit the stick, we're not going to get this same effective sort of rebound where we can say, put this out of danger with no chance of a corner happening. So that right glove really provides a lot of good rebound, a lot of good control, and a lot of good direction. So we need to try to teach our goalkeepers to want to use their right glove rather than wanting to use their actual stick. All right. We've got another example, again, of the right-hand glove being used. So again, notice the ability to then be able to control that actual rebound there. So the ball's coming up high. It's got a player who is very close to him from the opposition. So if that rebound is a bit inaccurate and it bounces off, it's very likely he's going to be opening up a corner. And in indoor hockey, as we're all aware, we don't want to be giving away penalty corners. They're a massive opportunity for teams to score. So we need to be reducing the number of corners and opportunities that we give away. And here the goalkeeper's able to use his glove to really effectively just put that ball over the back line near no one and all we've given away is possession back on the halfway. So we haven't put ourselves in any sort of bad position here. Whereas using the stick, it's going to be very difficult to try to get out of this situation without probably a corner. Okay. The next skill for the goalkeeper we're going to look at is something called a leg block. So I like to have my goalkeepers learn to use this as one where they have to react to a low shot of the goal, so essentially a shot on the ground. And in particular, it might be a spin shot, which is hard to read, or it's hard for the goalkeeper to be ready for it. It might just catch the keeper off guard. It might happen really quickly. And it's hard for them to sort of say to themselves, oh, where's that ball going? Is it going in that position, or is it another 15 centimeters further across? So it's more like a quick reaction, which allows them to block a much larger area of the goal to make saves on these reaction type low shots, particularly spins. It can also be used in, say, those one-on-one situations, whether it be a shootout situation or it's earlier on where we saw players receiving with their back to goalkeepers and they do a spin. A goalkeeper can use this where they put their leg down as a block, and it becomes sort of like a player would be doing a block tackle on the ground. So they can use this with their leg as a tackle, which then means it's more unlikely for them to be blown with a penalty corner against them. Whereas if they reach in with their stick and they miss and there's a lot of sound, that there's more opportunities for them to have free hits against them. So I've got one clip here which just sort of shows the idea of how this block works, where we lay the leg on the ground while the other leg is up. So you can see there how it's about that quick reaction. The players had a spin shot. We're sort of up. We're sort of looking for the shot, and it's like, oh, there's the ball. It's coming down my right-hand side. Quick reaction, and we drop our leg to the side to block. He's also got his glove down towards it, but essentially we're trying to use our leg. Now, one of the things we also want to make sure of is when our goalkeepers are doing this, we actually want to see the other leg very close to where we've laid our leg block down, so we don't open up a gap between our legs. And we want our goalkeepers to be able to do it with both legs. So if the ball's coming to the right-hand side of the goalkeeper, we want them to be able to lay their right leg on the ground. If the ball's going to the left, we want them to be able to lay their left leg on the ground. And if they can get really good at being able to do this, they're going to find they're probably going to make more saves on those quick low spin shots. And they're also going to find they're going to be able to do better tackles in those one-on-one situations, particularly where players want to do a spin around them. And one of the easy ways for this to be practiced is, so for example, you can have a pass directly to a player on top of the circle, and they're practicing their spin shot. So they're receiving the ball with their back to goals and they do a spin shot. And then the goalkeeper is practicing picking up, is the ball going to my left or going to my right? If they say it's going to their right, then they drop the leg block with the leg down on the right-hand side. If they say it's going to my left, then they drop their left leg on the ground into that block. So you can basically have the players practicing their spin shot while the goalkeeper's practicing their leg block. So it allows the goalkeepers to be able to practice specific saving skills against specific types of shots as well. All right, now we talked about as well at the very start that one of the areas we're going to look at was what we determined as defensive skills. So I've got a couple of skills that I put into that area of defensive. So all the skills we've looked at so far, other than the goalkeeper, have essentially been skills for ball possession. So when a player has the ball. These next two skills are skills which are for players who don't have the ball, so non-ball possession, so players when they're defending. One of the key things I believe for indoor is the ability to four-stick defend, being able to stay on the four-stick as much as possible without doing the big reach onto the back stick and exposing their feet and exposing gaps to pass. So it involves a lot of good footwork, a lot of good positioning. It involves what I call spatial pressure. So for each defender, finding the space they need between them and the ball carrier so that the ball carrier feels under pressure, the ball carrier focuses on the ball carrier doesn't see the options that are available, they get very focused on the ball and maintaining possession. And that then allows the defender to slow things down. It allows the defender to make sure they control the situation and have more time. So one of the other things with four-stick defending is I like to encourage not just one defender to come in, but the one defender holds them up and we get that second player in. So here's a couple of examples of that four-stick defending and the ability to stay on the four-stick, which then allows the defender to not expose their feet, not give away corners, not reach in with a back stick and give away penalty corners as well. The other quick little thing before we look at it, I want to mention is if a player defends on their four-stick and I'm defending and I want to move my entire stick to my left-hand side of my body, when I move my stick by keeping it on the four-stick to my left, generally I can only move my glove and my left hand with the stick a certain distance. So maybe this far, I'll be able to move it that way. So I can't cover a huge range. But when I move my four-stick direction, I can tend to move a much greater distance. So it means I can overcompensate and I can be a little bit more to a player towards my back stick on them because I can reach further on my four-stick. So here's a couple of video examples of the four-stick defending. So we're staying on our four-stick. He's reached in, which it wasn't great, but he's staying on his four-stick, making it very difficult for the player and not exposing his feet. Now, the other thing about four-stick defending, which I like to tell my players, is I think it's very important that when they four-stick defend, that their feet have to stay behind the line of the stick. So here's a common thing that a lot of defenders will do right here. You can see the defender in the red, the Austrian player. His stick is covering his right foot, but he's got his left foot stuck out to the side. So he's actually exposed his left foot. And that means that now it's vulnerable to giving away a corner. So it's important that defenders are able to maintain a position where they're protecting their feet behind their four-stick and not putting their feet out beside their stick and exposing them. Here's another one, and we'll see the player coming down the other side of the court this time with the ball. So the player runs down this side, which we traditionally tend to run in and put our back stick down. So the player's kept his four-stick down, he's kept his glove nice and close to the ground, so he's been able to protect his feet there. So the ball didn't actually hit his feet there. It basically hit his stick and glove because he was staying on his four-stick nice and low. And the other thing about this one is even though there was a gap between our defender on his four-stick and the back line, here, what we'll notice is that's not a big enough space for the ball carrier to run through. But if he was to, for example, pass it down between the defender and the back line, it's either going to go out or the goalkeeper is basically going to be in the way and not have to move to save it. So we're not losing anything by allowing that small amount of space there as well and staying on our four-stick. And we're putting a bit of pressure then on this red player to try to get around. Here's another example of the four-stick defending. So again, that similar right-hand side where we might have a tendency to come in on our reverse stick and give away something silly. And what we'll notice with this one is similar to what I said earlier. This one, we've managed to have the first defender has managed to slow down the player with the ball with that spatial pressure. And that's allowed a second player, the number 16 on the right, to come in and then assist. So now it is a much bigger area for our attacker with the ball to have to try and eliminate. So we've stayed on our 4 stick here. And if you notice the defender on the right-hand side, the guy in the yellow to the right, he's got both feet behind the 6, so he's not exposing his feet. Here, though, that's what we're talking about. So he sort of stepped up and put his foot up beside the glove. So now the stick's not protecting it. And if the Belgian player, the player in the red, is aware of that, he could just do a little stick movement, pop the ball on the foot, and now we've got a corner against us. So one of the key things, like we said, is the position now he's in, having that foot behind the stick and not exposing it, so there's a position for the player to just pop it on a foot. But again, staying on the 4 stick just means a lot more strength, a lot less opportunities. And if we end up having to do the reverse stick tackle, well, we're probably going to have to reach a lot less than we would have if we just started on our back stick. So I'll just go back to that and replay that one more time, and then we'll go to the last bit. All right, so we're almost there. So the last one I want to talk about is something called a takeover tackle. I call it a takeover tackle. Other people may have other names for it. I like to call it a takeover tackle because essentially what we're doing is the player who's got possession of the ball, you know, they've got it, they're holding possession, they're trying to protect it, and then the defender just takes over that possession. So it's an actual, not aggressive, but it's a proactive move by the defender, where the defender is proactively taking that ball rather than the opponent sort of running into their stick or, you know, losing possession just because they run into the opponent. So it's a really great skill for a defender to be able to use, especially when our attacker is facing their back to our defender. So, you know, they're facing away and they've got their back towards us. So that spin sort of position that a player wants to eliminate from. But when they're close to the boards and when we've got them stationary and they're trying to work out what they're going to do, the key with it is our defender is looking for the opportunity when the ball carrier moves the ball outside the line of their feet. So if the ball carrier is protecting it well and they're keeping it sort of between their feet, it's not going to really provide that opportunity. But if we have the ball carrier and we have their foot here, and then they move the ball outside the line of the foot, we then have this beautiful gap that we can reach through to take possession of the ball. And here's a really good example, I think, of that takeover tackle. So you can just see there how he's reached in, and the player in the white from Germany wasn't really aware of it. So he's moving the ball, trying to protect it. He's got his back to him, but then he just has the ball and it's not really being protected by his feet. So then what happens is it becomes easy for the defender. Let me just, yep, that's right, just muting that so we don't have the background sound. So it becomes easy then for this defender to be able to just reach in front of the foot, and he places his stick basically between the ball and the ball carrier's body. So now the ball carrier really can't do anything and has nowhere to go. And now the defender has the ball and he's taken over possession and he's away. So this is a really great tackle for defenders to be able to use well, because we will always find that we'll get attackers that want to face the boards and play with the ball and waste time and hold possession, but they'll often put the ball and drag it outside the line of their feet, and it makes it very easy for the defender just to reach in. So we don't want to do it when the ball's back in their feet, because we might connect with the body, we might connect with the stick, and timing is just very important here. So you'll notice the timing. So as the player's about to do the drag, he sticks the stick in nice and low, and then we're away with it. Watch it in normal motion one more time. and that is the takeover tackle. All right, so pretty much that's all the skills I wanted to look at and sort of say to you, these are the skills I think if we have our players competent in, that you will find your team has very successful at a very high level, because all of these skills promote attacking play, they promote using small spaces, they promote the opportunity to create chances from things that may not have seemed like chances before. Now, if you're looking for some extra indoor hockey resources, have a look at my YouTube channel. I've got lots of drills on there and videos and clips of different skills and things like that. And if you've got any questions that you think of after we have our little question session here, so after the webinar is finished, just feel free to email me. But there's lots of stuff on there. And like I said as well, I'm going to try to have some more webinars where we focus on specific things. Like, so another webinar will just be on training drills and games. Another webinar will be on just defensive structures or attacking structures or just corners, attacking corners. So that's what we wanted to look at tonight. If you've got any questions, please either take yourself off mute and ask them, or do it on the chat. Preferably, let's not have multiple people unmuting themselves and talking over each other. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them now.
Steve, can I jump in?
Certainly.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for this. This was absolutely amazing. Really appreciate your efforts. So yeah, obviously a trend, and I'm sure you would know this. So everything's been attacking left to right, and 3 of your technical skills all involved with the V-drag. So most of it was left to right. Now, going ahead, let's say you were going to World Cup. Unfortunately, we obviously heard the news this year that it was postponed, but next year in late Feb or March. How would you set up to try and counter that? If every technical skill that you're going to be training is to manipulate the opposition's left foot, how do we stop that from, how do we stop conceding from that area?
So this is where you've then got to look at what a player can do, for example, when they receive the ball. So if we look at just, for example, just that right defender eliminating, for example, and running past that front line, that really can only be done if a forward on the left-hand side of the court overcommits on that right defender and then puts himself in a position where that one movement from the right defender then puts their body weight wrong, and they can run past them. So it's about then maybe that forward on the left-hand side identifying what the capabilities of that right defender are, and then working out the best distance they need to be each time to then, press or apply pressure. So it might be that they need to move up and be 3 steps further away rather than 1 step away and allowing them to do that movement, as an example for that right defender one. For a spin, for example, so if a player is receiving with their back to you as a defender and they're going to spin around you, the spin's really effective if the defender's really close to you. But say if you allow the opponent to receive the ball in front of you and they receive it and you're right on their back, what you might quickly decide is, well, I'm in an awkward position here. I'm quickly going to take 1 or 2 steps backwards. And by doing that, you've now created a small amount of space between you and the player receiving. But when they spin with the ball, whether they spin to their right or their left, well, they're not eliminating you. They're actually spinning, and now they're going to be facing you as a defender. Is that sort of making sense?
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's just about players then recognizing, well, how do we then counter these moves? So, for example, the arc. So one of the ways that a player is able to eliminate a defender with an arc is because they use that pace to run to their right, and often a defender tracks the exact same line. So the player with the ball runs an arc. Actually, I'll quickly put this onto the whiteboard because I think this will be better visually. Let me just try to do the swap of screens. For example, if we've got a player and they've got the ball, and then we have a defender, when the attacker runs this arc, what generally happens is the defender runs the arc as well. And because they're trying to move more sideways and maintain that distance from the attacker with the ball, and they're also running a little bit backwards, they can't run at the same pace. So then what often happens is this attacker will get further in front of them, and then our defender gets eliminated, or they might go on the back stick. Now, a little concept I have is I call this A to C. So if we imagine that the attacker with the ball, that starting point is A, we imagine the midpoint is B of that arc, and the end point is C. If our defender runs A, B, C, they're probably going to get beaten, and they're not going to be able to stay in the same position to place the pressure on. So I call this A to C. So what the defender does is, as they're moving, they realize that they're going to be beaten, this player's arcing, and they go straight from A straight to C. So therefore, they actually run a shorter distance, and they're able to then force this player running the arc, and they actually don't physically get around them. So again, that's
they meet them later.
Sorry?
So they meet them later, kind of.
Correct.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
So what it means is, essentially, with each of these attacking techniques, a defender has to then understand, well, what can I do to counter it? So with each one of them, there will be something the defender can do to counter it. And then it's going to be up to our attacker to turn around and say, well, they've countered that one. Now let me do this one instead. So I might, as a spin, for example, I'll just go back on the board. I might be the player here, and I've got the ball here, and I've got my defender behind me. I might start to spin this way, and this defender's very cluey. He's very ready for it, so he steps across. But then it's my attacker having the ability to move the ball to there, but recognize it quickly and then spin back the other way and utilize that space. So again, it's then about the ability to not do one thing, but be able to then do multiple things. So sort of answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. I think definitely. I just think if the German national coach or had to do a webinar like this, they're going to pretty much nail the exact same. You've spotted all the technical elements, and it comes down to, even if your team waxes it and waxes the defense, we're still going to concede from our left-hand side. The opposition is going to score from their right-hand side. So it's how do we those small inches to still stop what they're still going to score, but to try to find solutions.
And again, on that same theme, when I do one on the goal scoring stuff, I've done a fair bit of analysis over the tournaments, and what I've found is, in general, there's roughly, so we're talking high level games, roughly 9 to 10 goals scored in every game. And to actually win a game, you have to, on average, score about 6 goals.
Yeah.
So if you're only scoring 3 or 4, on average, you're actually the losing team. So you're always going to be conceding goals. You've really just got to, in indoor, you've got to outscore the opposition. So you're not going to be able to stop everything.
The Liverpool of 4 years ago.
Yeah, and we've seen that with some of the just amazing stuff some players can do, and they just pull out of nowhere, and it's like, how did they do that, and how did they score that?
Yeah. One final thing from me before I take over. Sorry. The floor to score is one thing which I feel that the elite players, just the ability to spin and then fall as they're finishing. And roll, I feel, is probably coming more and more into the game, which I think.
I didn't include one of the clips because I was saving that for the goal scoring one, but I've got a really nice clip of that one from the last Euros from Austria scoring it with Fabian Unterkircher, who does a really nice spin, but then he runs in the circle and he's got this nice falling shot that he places. Yeah, it's a real valuable skill.
I'll look out for that webinar as well, but thanks so much for this.
Thank you very much, Ross. Colin, you just asked about when strikers are tracking to the left through the circle and potentially tracking backstick shots, can they plant and spin? Definitely. So if they're running onto their backstick and they can maybe force the defender to try to get a little bit too far past them, then it's very simple for them to open up that space behind and spin back into it. So definitely. What else we got? In terms of, I haven't mentioned yet. So in terms of getting a copy of what we've done, I've basically recorded the show. So what I'll do is, once I've finished, within the next few days, I will actually upload it to that YouTube channel. So the whole webinar will be available on that YouTube channel if you want to use it. What else we got? Someone's just asked offhand what we're doing with COVID in Oz. We're very strange in Australia with COVID. We're very state orientated, so every state's different here. With the Aussie program, it's very difficult because we're all over Australia. So we're trying to do a lot of stuff online. I'm trying to travel to various areas and run some clinics, and we're trying to get some stuff. But for example, we've just had an outbreak in Sydney, and now I think no one's traveling to New South Wales, so it makes it quite hard. And yeah, I'm not sure when you guys are going to actually have your Pan-Ams, but hopefully they go ahead. What else we got? Anything else? What's this? Can you use the whiteboard to possibly indicate when a right-hand side defender could use crabbing to shift the press and maybe it open it up, or possibly through a deceptive pass to a middleman? So I suppose the easiest way, just to quickly describe that, because we obviously don't want to get too much into the tactics and everything, is just, for example, let's say we've got two defenders, we've got a ball there, and then we've got the opposition coming in applying pressure. So I'll just put 3 players like that. The ball comes across. Generally what's going to happen is these players who are pressing, they're going to see the ball coming across and they're going to say, this is the point, and they're going to start moving towards that point. So because we know they're going to start moving towards that point, this defender, the moment they receive, can start tracking inside. Now that then means these players are going to have to adjust their lines. And as this player moves with the ball over, this other defender might shift himself back a little bit, and then that allows that quick pass, and then that's going to open up these other spaces. Or as this player gets the ball and starts tracking in court, that might then create a space through here, or a nice space on the board. So they crab in and then they do a little back drag, a little cut, and they can use the space on the outside for one of their players moving into that space. So that's just real quick, but I hope that sort of gives you a bit of an answer to that question. All right, so it looks like that's all the questions. If there's any others, feel free to email me on that email address. It's stevewiller@bigpond.com. It's the one I sent you the link on. After Christmas is when I'm looking at probably trying to do another webinar. So after we've had Christmas and the New Year, so early January. If you've got any ideas for things you would like us to really discuss or talk about, please feel free to email me, and we can really make it a very structured sort of webinar on what you want to know. We might even, I don't know, do a Q&A one where you send all your questions in first, and then we just have one based on that. Just one quick question. Someone's asked what the app I'm using for the whiteboard. So I really like my iPad. So if you watched, for example, videos from the 2018 Indoor Hockey World Cup, you'd actually see me using my iPad as my whiteboard, because I can use video and draw over it during games. Now, the app is actually called, I think it's actually called Whiteboard. I'm just trying to find the exact name of it. I can't see the name, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and I'll show you what the icon looks like, but I'm sure it's just called Whiteboard. All right, so if you look at my computer screen, it's the one on the very bottom left, which has like a little pen above it and that little W looking symbol, but it's called Whiteboard. You can throw images in the background, you can draw over in multiple colors, and you can even screen record it. So I've done whiteboard, for example, talks where I've just talked over myself drawing on the whiteboard. All right, that looks like it's it. All right, so again, thank you very, very much for all of your time and putting up with me for this this period of time as well. If you have anything, again, please email me. Have a great holiday period, and enjoy your time with your families and everything. Hopefully COVID treats you well. Thank you very much.